Mina looked up from her microscope and smiled at the small purple flowers floating in the sample dish. The Taeyang blossoms were finally responding to the genetic modifications she had been working on for months. These tiny flowers could be the key to making their colony world even more beautiful than it already was. "Any luck with the flowers today?" Park Hyun asked as he walked into her laboratory. Her husband carried 2 cups of hot tea and set one down beside her workspace. "Look at this," Mina said, pointing to the screen that showed the flower's cellular structure. "The roots are growing stronger. If this works, we can plant them in the rocky areas near the mountains. The whole valley will be covered in purple by next spring." Hyun wrapped his arms around her shoulders and kissed the top of her head. "You always find ways to make our world more perfect." Mina leaned back against him and felt truly happy. 3 years ago, she and Hyun had left Earth to start a new life on Taeyang. The colony world was everything they had dreamed of. Rolling green hills, clean rivers, and air so fresh it made their lungs feel new every morning. 50,000 Korean settlers had made this place their home, and it felt like paradise. "Where is Seoul?" Mina asked, looking around the lab. "Playing in the garden with the Kim twins. She found some interesting bugs and wants to show them to you later." Their 6-year-old daughter, Seoul, was already showing signs of following in her mother's footsteps. The little girl collected insects and small creatures, asking endless questions about how they lived and what they ate. Yesterday, she had brought Mina a caterpillar and wanted to know if it would still remember being a caterpillar after it became a butterfly. The communication system in the lab suddenly made a loud beeping sound. Mina frowned and pressed the button to answer. "This is Colony Control, calling all residents," came the voice of Director Cho Nam. He sounded worried. "We have detected unknown ships entering our star system. All citizens should remain calm and stay close to their homes." Hyun and Mina looked at each other with concern. In 3 years, no unscheduled ships had ever come to Taeyang. Their colony was far from the major trade routes, and the Galactic Trade Federation had promised them this sector was completely safe. "Maybe it's just a merchant ship that got lost," Hyun said, but his voice showed he didn't really believe it. Mina saved her work and shut down the microscope. Through the laboratory window, she could see people in the street looking up at the sky and talking in small groups. Some were pointing toward the eastern horizon, where the afternoon sun was beginning to set. "I want to check on Seoul," she said. They walked outside and found their daughter in the backyard garden with her 2 best friends, 7-year-old Kim Hana and Kim Dae. The children were examining something in the dirt, completely unaware that anything unusual was happening. "Mama!" Seoul called out when she saw them. "Come see what we found!" She was holding a small green beetle in her palm. The insect had tiny golden spots on its back that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Mina said, kneeling down to look closer. "But maybe we should go inside for a while." "Why?" Seoul asked. "We want to find more beetles." Before Mina could answer, a new sound filled the air. It was deep and rumbling like thunder, but it didn't stop. The sound got louder and louder until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. People in the street were now pointing at the sky and shouting. Mina looked up and felt her heart stop. Enormous dark shapes were moving across the clouds. Ships, huge ships that blocked out portions of the sky. "Everyone inside now," Hyun said, scooping Sul up in his arms. But it was already too late. Bright beams of light suddenly shot down from the ships in the sky. Where the beams touched the ground, buildings exploded into flames. The community center where Mina had attended music concerts disappeared in a ball of fire. The school where children learned to read was gone in an instant. "Run!" someone screamed. The rumbling sound became a roar as smaller ships began landing all around the colony. They were dark gray and shaped like wedges, with sharp edges that looked designed for war. As soon as they touched the ground, ramps opened and creatures began pouring out. Mina had never seen anything like them. They walked on two legs like humans, but they were covered in dark green scales and had long tails. Their heads were shaped like triangles with yellow eyes that seemed to glow. Each creature carried weapons that looked like they belonged in a nightmare. "The house!" Hyun shouted over the noise. "We need to get to the house!" They ran across the garden toward their home, but more of the beam weapons were firing from the sky. The house next door exploded, sending pieces of wood and metal flying through the air. Sul was crying now, clinging to her father's neck. One of the scaled creatures appeared around the corner of their house. It was taller than Hyun and moved with the quick, jerky motions of a predator. When it saw them, it raised its weapon. "Get down!" Hyun yelled, pushing Mina and Sul toward the ground. The creature fired its weapon. A bright green beam shot through the air where Hyun had been standing just a moment before. The beam hit the wall of their house and melted a hole straight through it. Hyun grabbed a garden tool from the ground and ran toward the creature. "Stay with Sol!" he shouted to Mina. "Hyun, no!" Mina screamed, but her husband was already charging at the alien warrior. The creature was faster. It turned its weapon toward Hyun and fired again. This time, the green beam hit him directly in the chest. Mina watched in horror as her husband's body simply disappeared. One moment he was there running to protect his family. The next moment there was nothing but empty air and the smell of burned metal. "Daddy!" Sul cried out. The creature heard the child's voice and turned toward them. Its yellow eyes looked at Mina and Sul with what seemed like hunger. It raised its weapon again. Mina grabbed Sul and rolled behind a large rock in their garden just as another green beam shot over their heads. She held her daughter tight and tried to think of what to do. There was nowhere to run. The creatures were everywhere, and their weapons could destroy anything. More of the alien ships were landing nearby. Through the smoke and flames, Mina could see larger creatures climbing out. These ones rode on four-legged beasts that looked like giant lizards with teeth as long as knives. One of the riding beasts came charging through their garden. Sol looked up at the wrong moment and tried to run. The beast stepped on the little girl before Mina could grab her. Sol's scream cut off suddenly, and then there was only silence. "Sol!" Mina crawled toward her daughter's broken body, but the scaled creature was coming around the rock. She had to choose between staying with Sul and trying to survive. Through her tears, she saw a cargo shuttle sitting in the field behind their house. The pilot was trying to start the engines while creatures shot at him from the ground. If she could reach the shuttle, maybe she could escape. Maybe she could survive to tell someone what had happened here. Mina kissed her daughter's forehead one last time and then ran toward the shuttle as fast as she could. Behind her, the colony of Taeyang burned and 50,000 people died under the weapons of the Vorthak Empire. The cargo shuttle crashed into the landing platform of Federation Outpost 7 with a sound like breaking thunder. Mina felt her body slam against the pilot's seat as metal scraped against metal. Smoke filled the cabin and alarms screamed warnings that no one would hear. She tried to move, but her left arm hung at a strange angle. Pain shot through her ribs every time she breathed. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead into her eyes, making everything look red. "Help!" she whispered, but her voice was too quiet. "Please help." The shuttle door had been damaged in the crash and would not open properly. Mina used her good arm to push against it until it moved enough for her to crawl outside. The outpost was small, just a few buildings connected by covered walkways. She could see people running toward the crashed shuttle. "There's someone in there!" a woman's voice called out. Strong hands lifted Mina from the wreckage and carried her toward the medical building. She tried to tell them about Taeyang, about the attack, about her family, but the words came out wrong. Everything felt like it was happening to someone else. "The Vorthak," she managed to say before the darkness took her. Mina woke up 3 days later in a white room that smelled like cleaning, chemicals. Her arm was in a metal brace, and bandages covered most of her body. A young doctor with kind eyes was checking the machines next to her bed. "You're awake," the doctor said. "I'm Dr. Choi Young. You've been through something terrible." "My family," Mina said. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "My husband and daughter, they're dead." Dr. Choi's face became sad. "I know. We received the reports from Taeyang. I'm very sorry for your loss." Reports. That meant other people knew what had happened. Someone else had escaped or sent a message before the colony fell. "How many survived?" Mina asked. Dr. Choi looked uncomfortable. "You were the only one who made it off the planet. The Vorthak Empire destroyed everything. 50,000 people, all dead, all of them except her." "Why?" Mina asked. "Why did they attack us? We never hurt anyone. We just wanted to grow flowers and raise our children." "The Empire has been expanding for years," Dr. Choi explained. "They take what they want and destroy what they don't need. Your colony was in their path." Mina stared at the white ceiling and tried not to think about Sewell's last scream. "What does the Federation plan to do about it?" Dr. Choi was quiet for a long time. "The Federation is trying to avoid a war. They're hoping to negotiate with the Empire." "Negotiate?" Mina sat up, so quickly that pain shot through her ribs. "They murdered 50,000 people and the Federation wants to negotiate?" "I know it's not what you want to hear, but starting a war with the Vorthak Empire could cost millions of lives across the galaxy." Mina lay back down, but anger was building in her chest like fire. "So we do nothing. We let them win." 2 weeks, Later, Admiral Kim Jae visited the outpost. He was a tall man with gray hair and a uniform covered in medals. He sat beside Mina's bed and spoke in the voice people use when they're trying to sound caring. "Lee Mina, the Federation is deeply sorry for your loss. What happened on Taiyang was a tragedy." "A tragedy," Mina repeated. "That's what you call mass murder. I understand your anger, but I want you to know that your sacrifice was not meaningless. Because of what happened to Taiyang, we were able to establish a peace treaty with the Vorthak Empire. No more colonies will be attacked." Mina stared at the Admiral. "You made a deal with them." "We prevented a war that could have destroyed dozens of worlds by letting them keep Taiyang. By saving lives," Admiral Kim said. "Sometimes leaders have to make difficult choices." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small tablet. "The Federation wants to help you rebuild your life. There's enough money here to buy a new home on any Federation world. You can start over, maybe start a new family." Mina looked at the tablet and felt something cold settle in her stomach. "You're trying to buy my silence." "I'm trying to help you move forward." "What if I don't want to move forward? What if I want to tell people the truth about what the Federation did?" "Admiral." Kim's kind expression disappeared. "That would not be wise. The peace treaty is fragile. If people knew the details, they might demand actions that would restart the war." "You mean they might demand justice?" "I mean they might demand things that would get them all killed." The Admiral stood up. "Take the money, Miss Lee. Find a quiet world and make a new life. That's your best option." After he left, Mina lay in bed and thought about his words. The Federation had sacrificed Taiyang to buy peace with murderers. They wanted her to take their money and disappear so no one would ask uncomfortable questions, but Admiral Kim had made a mistake. He had assumed that Mina wanted to live quietly on some peaceful world. He didn't understand that she had already died on Taiyang with her family. The person lying in this hospital bed was something else. Something that had nothing left to lose. Dr. Choi came to check on her that evening. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Mina said. "Dr. Choi, can I ask you something?" "Of course. You've been kind to me. Why?" Dr. Choi sat down. "My grandmother lived through the Earth unification wars. She used to tell me stories about the weapons humans made back then. Terrible weapons that could destroy entire planets." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she also told me that after the wars ended, Earth's government decided those weapons were too dangerous to ever use again. They locked them away and tried to forget they existed." Mina's heart started beating faster. "What kind of weapons?" "I don't know the details, but my grandmother said they were hidden in places where only people with the highest security clearance could find them." Dr. Choi stood up and walked toward the door. Then he stopped and turned back. "Admiral Kim left his tablet on your bedside table when he was here. Did you know that Admiral tablets contain access codes for restricted Federation databases?" After Dr. Choi left, Mina stared at the tablet for a long time. Then she picked it up and began to type. It took her 3 hours to break through the Admiral's security passwords. What she found in the restricted files made her hands shake. There were references to something called Project Fenrir, weapons research that had been classified at the highest levels. Research that had been buried so deep that most people didn't even know it existed. The files mentioned storage facilities on Earth, places where the deadliest creations of human science waited in the darkness. Mina made her decision. She was going to Earth. She was going to find these weapons, and then she was going to show the Vorthak Empire what humans were really capable of when someone pushed them too far. The Federation thought they could buy her silence with money and threats. They thought she would quietly disappear and let her family's killers go unpunished. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The transport ship arrived at Earth's orbital station on a Tuesday morning. Mina pressed her face against the small window and looked down at the blue and green planet below. She had been born here 28 years ago, but it felt like looking at a foreign world. Earth looked peaceful, too peaceful. White clouds drifted over continents where billions of people lived comfortable lives. They had no idea that their government had traded away 50,000 Korean colonists to prevent a war. They didn't know that somewhere on this beautiful planet, weapons capable of destroying entire star systems waited in hidden vaults. "First time back to Earth?" asked the passenger sitting next to her. He was a young businessman returning from a trade mission to the outer colonies. "Yes," Mina lied. The identification papers she carried said her name was Kim Sun, a xenobiology student from the Kepler colonies. Dr. Choi had helped her obtain the fake documents before she left the outpost. "You picked a good time to visit. Earth is having its Spring Festival next week. There will be concerts and art shows in every major city." Mina nodded and smiled, but inside she felt disgusted. While Earth celebrated with festivals, the ashes of Taiyang were still cooling in space. While people here enjoyed concerts, her daughter's body lay crushed under alien feet. The transport docked at Luna Station, the massive structure that orbited Earth's moon. Thousands of people moved through the corridors like rivers of humanity. Merchants sold food and souvenirs. Children laughed as they chased each other through the crowds. Everyone looked so happy and safe. These people had forgotten what war looked like. They had lived under the Federation's protection for so long that they thought peace was a natural law. They believed their government would always find diplomatic solutions to every problem. Mina took a shuttle down to Earth's surface and landed in Seoul, the same city where she had been born. The streets were clean and lined with flowering trees. Electric cars moved quietly along roads that had no potholes or damage. Everything was perfect, maintained, and peaceful. She found a small hotel and paid for a room using credits from Admiral Kim's tablet. Then she began searching for information about Professor Han Wu. The university records showed that Han Wu had retired 5 years ago after spending 30 years teaching galactic history. But older records, the ones that required more careful searching, revealed something interesting. Before becoming a teacher, Han Wu had worked for Earth's Military Research Division during the final years of the Unification Wars. Mina found his address in the university directory. He lived in a quiet neighborhood where old houses sat behind walls covered with climbing roses. She walked to his door on a Thursday evening when the sun was setting behind the mountains. Professor Han Wu was older than she had expected. Probably in his 70s, with white hair and hands that shook slightly when he moved. He opened his door and looked at her with curious eyes. "Can I help you?" "Professor Han, my name is Kim Sun. I'm a researcher studying the history of Earth's military development during the Unification Wars. I was hoping you might have time to answer some questions." Han Wu's expression became cautious. "I don't discuss my old work with anyone. That period of my life is closed." "Please," Mina said. "It's important." "Many things are important, young lady. That doesn't mean they should be discussed." He started to close the door. "I'm from Taiyang," Mina said quickly. The door stopped moving. Han Wu stared at her for a long moment. Taiyang was destroyed 3 months ago. No one survived. "One person survived," Mina said. "Me." Han Wu looked up and down the street, checking to see if anyone was watching. Then he stepped back and opened the door wider. "Come inside." His house was filled with books and old photographs. The walls were covered with pictures of mountains and forests, peaceful scenes that made the rooms feel calm and safe. He led her to a small kitchen and made tea while she told him her story. She told him about Saul and Hyun. She told him about watching her family die while alien weapons burned their world. She told him about the Federation's betrayal and Admiral Kim's attempt to buy her silence. When she finished, Han Wu sat quietly for several minutes, holding his teacup with both hands. "Why did you come to me?" "Because I know you worked on military projects during the wars. I know you have access to information that most people have never seen." "What kind of information?" Mina pulled out the tablet and showed him the files she had copied from Admiral Kim's database. Han Wu read them carefully, his face becoming more serious with each page. "Project Fenrir," he said finally. "I haven't heard that name in 30 years. You know about it?" "I helped design part of it." Han Wu set down his teacup. "Miss Kim, or whatever your real name is, you're asking about weapons that were buried for good reasons. The things we created during the Unification Wars were too dangerous for any civilized society to use. The Vorthak Empire isn't civilized. That's exactly why these weapons were locked away. We didn't want to become like our enemies." Mina leaned forward. "Professor, 50,000 people are dead. My husband and daughter are dead. The Federation sold us out to prevent a war, and now they want me to stay quiet so no one knows what they did." "And what do you plan to do about it?" "I plan to find these weapons. I plan to use them to destroy the Vorthak Empire." Han Wu laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "You plan to fight an entire galactic empire by yourself?" "If that's what it takes. You would start a war that could kill billions of people." "The war has already started," Mina said. "The empire is expanding. They're attacking more colonies every month. The Federation keeps making deals and giving up more territory, hoping the monsters will eventually be satisfied. But monsters are never satisfied." Han Wu stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet and peaceful. Children were playing in a nearby park while their parents watched and smiled. "Those children out there," he said. "They've never known war. They've never seen cities burning or watched their friends die. Do you want to change that?" I want to make sure they never have to see what I saw on Taeyang. Han Wu turned back to her. The weapons you're looking for aren't just dangerous to your enemies. They're dangerous to everyone, including the people who use them. Some of them can't be controlled once they're activated. Then teach me how to control them. I'm an old man who just wants to tend his garden and read his books. And I'm a dead woman who has nothing left to lose. They stared at each other across the small kitchen. Finally, Han Wu sighed and sat back down. The Svalbard Deep Archives, he said. 500 meters below the polar ice cap. That's where they stored the most dangerous research from Project Fenrir. How do I get inside? You don't. The facility is sealed and guarded. Only people with the highest military clearance can enter. Mina smiled for the first time since leaving Taeyang. Then I guess we'll have to break in. The Svalbard Deep Archives were located beneath 2 kilometers of ice and rock in Earth's frozen north. The facility had been built during the Unification Wars to store weapons that were too dangerous to keep anywhere else. Getting inside required passing through 7 security checkpoints, each one more difficult than the last. Mina and Professor Han Wu spent 2 weeks planning their break-in. They studied maps of the facility, memorized guard schedules, and practiced using the equipment they would need. Han Wu's old military contacts helped them obtain security passes that would get them through the first 3 checkpoints. After that, we're on our own, Han Wu said as they prepared to leave Seoul. If we're caught, the government will deny we ever existed. I stopped existing 3 months ago, Mina replied. Now I'm just a ghost looking for revenge. They flew to Norway on a civilian transport and then took a ground vehicle to the Arctic Research Station that served as the public entrance to the archives. The station was small and appeared to be studying climate data, but Mina could see the hidden defense systems built into the walls. Sergeant Oh Min was on duty at the first security checkpoint. He was a young soldier with tired eyes who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. When Han Wu showed their forged research passes, the sergeant barely looked at them. Purpose of visit? Oh Min asked. Historical research on pre-Federation. Military technology, Han Wu answered. Duration? 3 days. Oh Min stamped their passes and waved them through. But as they walked toward the elevator that would take them deeper underground, he called out, Professor Han, didn't you used to teach at Seoul University? Han Wu turned around slowly. Yes, I did. My sister was in one of your classes 5 years ago. Lee Hai. She said you were the best teacher she ever had. I remember Hai. She wrote an excellent paper on the causes of the Centauri Rebellion. Oh, Min smiled. She's a diplomat now, working on trade agreements with the outer colonies. His smile faded. She was supposed to visit Taeyang last month, but the trip was canceled after the attack. Mina felt her heart stop. This soldier's sister had almost been on Taeyang when the Vorthak Empire destroyed it. That was a terrible thing, Han Wu said carefully. My sister said the Federation could have sent warships to protect the colony, but they chose not to. She said it was politics. Oh Min looked angry. 50,000 people died because of politics. Mina and Han Wu exchanged glances. This young sergeant was not happy with his government's decisions. Politics can be complicated, Han Wu said. My sister doesn't think it was complicated at all. She thinks the Federation sacrificed those people to avoid a war. Oh Min looked around to make sure no one else was listening. She thinks someone should make the Vorthak Empire pay for what they did. That could be dangerous thinking, Mina said. Maybe. But dangerous thinking is sometimes the only kind worth having. They continued down into the archives, but Mina couldn't stop thinking about the sergeant's words. When they reached the 4th security checkpoint, she made a decision. Sergeant, "Oh!" she called out as he walked past them in the corridor. He stopped and turned around. "Yes. My real name is Lee Mina. I was on Taeyang when it was attacked. I watched my family die." Oh Min's eyes widened. But the reports said no one survived. The reports were wrong. Mina pulled out the tablet containing Admiral Kim's files. And so was your sister. The Federation didn't just choose not to protect Taeyang. They made a deal with the Vorthak Empire. They traded our lives for peace. Oh Min read the files in silence. When he finished, his hands were shaking with anger. "This is treason," he said. "The Federation government committed treason against its own people." "Are you going to report us?" Han Wu asked. "Report you for what? For showing me the truth?" Oh Min looked at Mina. "What are you planning to do?" "I'm planning to find weapons that can destroy the Vorthak Empire. I'm planning to make them pay for every life they took. The weapons in this facility are restricted for good reasons. So was the truth about Taeyang, but I think people have a right to know." Oh Min was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a master security card. "This will get you through all the remaining checkpoints. But I want something in return." "What?" "I want to help. My sister was right. Someone should make them pay." With Oh Min's help, they reached the deepest level of the archives. The storage vaults were enormous rooms filled with sealed containers and computer terminals. Each container was labeled with codes that meant nothing to most people, but Han Wu knew exactly what they were looking for. "Here," he said, stopping, in front of a container marked FN0007. Nanotechnology weapons. Self-replicating machines designed to target specific genetic markers. They opened the container and found thousands of small metal spheres, each one no bigger than a marble. The accompanying files explained how the spheres contained microscopic machines that could be programmed to attack any biological target. These were designed to fight the Earth Liberation Army during the final year of the Unification Wars, Han Wu explained. "But we never used them because we realized they might not stop once they finished their original targets." Mina picked up one of the spheres. It felt warm in her hand. "Can they be programmed to target Vorthak DNA?" "Theoretically, yes. But you would need genetic samples from the enemy." "I have those." Mina pulled a small vial from her pocket. It contained blood she had collected from the crashed Vorthak landing craft on Taeyang. "Will this be enough?" Han Wu stared at the vial. "You've been planning this for months." "I've been planning this since the moment my daughter died. They spent the next 6 hours collecting weapons and information from the archives. Neural disruption viruses that could reprogram enemy brains, molecular disruptors that could break down any material at the atomic level. self-repairing war machines that could function for decades without maintenance. But the most dangerous discovery was in Vault FN001. The files called it gray goo, microscopic machines that could convert any matter into more copies of themselves. The scientists who created it had been terrified of their own success. This could consume an entire planet if it wasn't properly controlled, Hanwoo said. Good, Mina replied. The Vorthak Empire has a lot of planets. Min helped them load everything into a transport vehicle. As they prepared to leave the archives, he made them an offer. I know people who aren't happy with the Federation government. Other soldiers who think we should be fighting instead of making deals with murderers. What kind of people? Mina asked. Engineers who design military equipment, pilots who fly combat ships, people who joined the military to protect colonies like Taiyang, not to watch them get sold out by politicians. Can you trust them? With this? Yes. They've been waiting for someone to give them a reason to fight back. Mina looked at the weapons they had stolen and made her decision. She was no longer just one person seeking revenge. She was building an army. The abandoned lunar mining station had been empty for 20 years, but engineer Yoon Ki and pilot Bae Su transformed it into a weapons laboratory in just 3 weeks. Hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon, the station was invisible to Federation. Sensors and far enough from civilian areas that accidents wouldn't hurt innocent people. Mina stood in the main laboratory watching Yoon Ki work on their first weapon. The engineer was a small woman with quick hands and an angry heart. Her brother had been killed in a Vorthak raid on a merchant convoy 6 months ago, but the Federation had called it an unfortunate incident and done nothing about it. The nanobots are ready, Yoon Ki said, holding up a container of what looked like gray dust. Each particle contains machines programmed to recognize Vorthak DNA. Once they make contact with a target, they'll begin converting the victim's cellular structure into more nanobots. How long does the process take? Mina asked. 12 minutes from first contact to complete conversion. The victim will remain conscious for most of that time. Mina nodded. She wanted the Vorthak warriors to understand what was happening to them. She wanted them to feel afraid. Bae Su was working on the second weapon at a computer terminal across the room. The pilot was tall and thin, with scars on his hands from years of flying dangerous missions. His wife had been stationed on a border colony that was relocated to make room for Vorthak expansion. The Federation had given all the colonists new homes on safer worlds, but Bae Su knew it was just another surrender disguised as diplomacy. The neural virus is almost finished, he called out. I've named it Trojan Horse. Once it infiltrates a Vorthak communication system, it will rewrite their brain patterns to make them loyal to whoever controls the program. Can it spread through their entire fleet? Mina asked. If we can get it into their central command network, it will infect every ship, every soldier, and every officer in their battle groups. Min entered the laboratory carrying a data pad with intelligence reports. The sergeant had been using his military contacts to gather information about Vorthak movements throughout the galaxy. I found our first target, he said, showing them the data. A supply convoy heading to the border colonies. 3 cargo ships with escorts. They'll pass through the Kepler system in 4 days. How many escorts? Bae-Su asked. 2 destroyer-class warships, about 300 Vorthak soldiers total. Yun-Ki looked up from her work. That's a lot of enemies for our first test. It's perfect, Mina said. If the weapons work on a convoy that size, we'll know they can handle bigger targets. Professor Han Wu had been quiet during most of their planning sessions. The old man seemed troubled by what they were creating, but he continued to help because he knew the Federation would never act on its own. Are you certain about this path? He asked Mina. Once you attack that convoy, there will be no going back. The Empire will know that humans are fighting them with forbidden weapons. Good, Mina replied. I want them to know. I want them to be afraid. And when they retaliate, when they attack Earth itself, then maybe the Federation will finally understand what kind of enemies they're trying to negotiate with. They spent the next 3 days preparing for the attack. Bae-Su modified a small combat ship to carry their weapons without being detected. Yun-Ki programmed the nanobots to activate only when they encountered Vorthak genetic material. Omin gathered intelligence about the convoy's route and defenses. The convoy was traveling through empty space between 2 star systems when Mina's ship intercepted them. The Vorthak vessels were enormous compared to the small human fighter, but Mina wasn't planning to fight them with conventional weapons. Unknown human vessel, came a message in the harsh Vorthak language. You are in violation of restricted space. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Mina activated her communication system and responded in perfect Vorthak. She had spent weeks learning their language from captured data files. I am Li Mina of Taeyang Colony. You murdered my family and 50,000 of my people. I'm here to return the favor. The Vorthak commander laughed. One small human ship against our entire convoy? You must be insane. You're about to find out what insane humans are capable of. Mina released the first weapon. Thousands of nanobots spread out from her ship like an invisible cloud, drifting through space toward the Vorthak vessels. The enemy sensors couldn't detect them because they were too small and moved too slowly. She's not attacking, one of the Vorthak officers said over the communication channel. What is she waiting for? The nanobots reached the first destroyer and passed through its hull as if the metal walls didn't exist. Within minutes, they had found the ship's life support system and begun infiltrating the air circulation. The first Vorthak soldier to breathe in the nanobots was a young warrior named Kresh, who was working in the engine room. He felt nothing at first, then noticed a strange taste in his mouth. By the time he realized something was wrong, the conversion process had already begun. Kresh tried to call for help, but his voice came out as a scream. His scales began changing color, shifting from green to gray. His claws fell off and were replaced by mechanical appendages that looked like small tools. Other soldiers rushed to help him, but they were already breathing the same contaminated air. One by one, they began to change. Within 12 minutes, the entire crew of the first destroyer had been converted into gray mechanical beings that followed Mina's telepathic commands. "What's happening to our escort?" demanded the convoy commander. Mina released the second weapon. The Trojan horse virus shot through space as a focused beam of energy and penetrated the command ship's communication array. Within seconds, it had spread through the entire fleet's computer network. The virus didn't change the Vorthak soldiers physically. Instead, it rewrote their brain patterns, making them believe that Mina was their rightful commander and that their previous loyalty to the Empire had been a mistake. "Attention all ships," the convoy commander suddenly announced. "We are now under the command of Admiral Mina of the Human Liberation Fleet. All personnel will follow her orders without question." The transformation was complete. 300 Vorthak soldiers and their entire convoy now belonged to Mina. She opened a communication channel to Vorthak space and began recording a message. "My name is Lee Mina. 3 months ago, your empire destroyed Taiyang Colony and murdered 50,000 humans, including my husband and daughter. You thought we were weak prey that couldn't fight back." Behind her, the converted Vorthak ships moved into formation, ready to follow her commands. "You were wrong. Humans are not weak. We're apex predators who have been pretending to be civilized. But you killed our children, so we're done pretending." She gestured toward the converted fleet. "These were your soldiers. Now they serve me. Every Vorthak warrior who faces human weapons will join them or die. We're coming for your empire, and we're bringing weapons your species can't even imagine." The message was broadcast across Vorthak space on all military frequencies. Within hours, every commander in the Empire had seen it. For the first time in their history, the Vorthak began to feel afraid. The Vorthak War fleet arrived at Earth's solar system 7 days after Mina's message reached their homeworld. 30 massive warships, each one the size of a small city, moved through space like metal mountains, carrying death. At the center of the fleet, Supreme Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the blue planet ahead. "Pathetic mammals," he growled to his officers. "They think their tricks with one convoy mean they can challenge the might of our empire. Today we will show them what real power looks like." Vextar was the same commander who had led the attack on Taiyang Colony. He remembered the human woman who had escaped in the cargo shuttle, but he had never imagined she would become dangerous, enough to threaten the Empire itself. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human government." "Put it through." The image of President Lee Wan appeared on the main screen. The human leader looked nervous and desperate, exactly the way Vextar expected prey to look when facing superior predators. "Supreme Commander Vextar," President Lee began, "the Federation government wants you to know that the attacks on your convoy were not authorized by any official human military force. We believe they were carried out by terrorists acting without our knowledge or approval." Vextar laughed, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You think we care about your government's approval? Your species has developed weapons that can convert our soldiers into slaves. That cannot be allowed to continue." "We're prepared to negotiate," President Lee said quickly. "The Federation is willing to make significant concessions in exchange for peace. The time for negotiation is over. Your people chose war when they turned our warriors into abominations. Now you will learn what war truly means." Vextar cut the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the bombardment. Target their major cities first." But as the Vorthak fleet moved toward Earth, they found something unexpected waiting for them. The space around the planet was filled with what looked like metallic dust clouds, drifting slowly through the vacuum. "What are those formations?" Vexitar demanded. His science officer studied the sensor readings. "Unknown, Commander. The particles are too small to identify, but there are millions of them." "Ignore them. They're probably just mining waste from their asteroid belt." The fleet continued its approach, but the first ship to enter the dust cloud suddenly stopped, moving. Its engines were still running, but the massive warship hung motionless in space. "Report!" Vextar shouted into his communicator. "Commander, this is Captain Threk aboard the Bloodspear. Our hull is being consumed. Something is eating through our armor plating." Through the main viewer, Vexitar could see the Bloodspear's hull changing color from dark metal to bright silver. The change spread across the ship's surface like a disease, converting everything it touched. "All ships, reverse course immediately," he commanded. But it was too late. The dust clouds were moving now, flowing toward the Vorthak fleet like living things. The particles weren't just mining waste. They were self-replicating machines designed to convert any material they touched into more copies of themselves. The second ship to be caught was the destroyer Painbringer. Within minutes, its hull had been completely transformed into silver nanobots that immediately began reproducing themselves. The ship's crew found their weapons and equipment dissolving in their hands, replaced by machines they couldn't understand or control. "What kind of weapons are these?" Vexitar's tactical officer asked in horror. "Human weapons," Vexitar replied grimly. "The kind they used to fight each other before they joined the galactic community. 6 more ships were consumed by the expanding swarm of nanobots before the remaining fleet could retreat to a safe distance. But even as they watched their vessels being transformed, a new threat appeared. The communications array on Vexitar's flagship began receiving signals from an unknown source. The data streams looked like normal military communications, but something was wrong with them. The signals seemed to pulse and shift in patterns that hurt to look at. "Don't look directly at those transmissions," the science officer warned. "There's something unusual about their structure." But several crew members had already been exposed to the signals. They stood at their workstations with blank expressions on their faces, staring at screens that showed swirling patterns of light and color. "We serve the Human Liberation Fleet," one of them said in a monotone voice. "Admiral Mina is our rightful commander. The Trojan horse virus had found them. The same weapon that had converted the convoy crews was now spreading through Vextar's flagship, turning his own soldiers against him one by one." "Shut down all communication systems," Vextar ordered. "Cannot comply," his communications officer replied with the same blank expression. "Admiral Mina requires constant contact with her fleet." Vexitar drew his sidearm and shot the infected officer, but it was too late. The virus had already spread to other systems throughout the ship. Within minutes, half his crew was following. Orders from the mysterious human Admiral Mina instead of their own commander. That's when Mina's voice came through every speaker on every ship in the surviving fleet. "Supreme Commander Vextar," she said in perfect Vorthak. "Do you remember Taeyang Colony? Do you remember the little girl you crushed under your war beast?" Vextar's blood went cold. "You're the woman from the cargo shuttle. I'm the woman whose family you murdered, and now I'm going to show you what happens when humans stop being civilized." The converted Vorthak ships began turning their weapons on the vessels that were still under Vextar's command. Brother fought brother as the virus spread through the fleet's communication networks, turning more soldiers every minute. "All remaining ships, emergency jump to hyperspace," Vextar commanded. "Jump drives are not responding," his navigator reported. "Something is interfering with our systems." On the tactical display, Vextar could see small objects moving between his ships. They looked like asteroids at first, but they were moving too precisely, too purposefully. As they got closer, he realized they were machines, war robots that had been hidden in the asteroid belt, waiting for the Vorthak fleet to arrive. The robots were sleek and deadly, with weapons that could punch through the heaviest armor. But the most terrifying thing about them was their behavior. They didn't just attack randomly. They moved with intelligence and coordination, working together to disable rather than destroy the Vorthak ships. "They want to capture us alive," Vextar realized. More robots were emerging from hiding places throughout the solar system. Some came from the moon, others from the outer planets. They had been waiting here for weeks, maybe months, preparing for this exact moment. The human woman had known the fleet was coming. She had prepared a trap that turned his own forces against him while surrounding him with machines designed to capture rather than kill. Vexatar's flagship shuddered as robot boarding craft attached themselves to the hull. He could hear cutting, tools working through the armor plating. "Commander," one of his remaining loyal officers said, "what are your orders?" Vextar looked at the tactical display showing his fleet being consumed by nanobots, converted by viruses, and captured by robots. In his long career, he had conquered dozens of worlds and defeated countless enemies. But he had never faced anything like this. "Signal the homeworld," he said quietly. "Tell them the humans are not what we thought they were." The captured Vorthak ships became Mina's fleet. Under the control of converted crews who now served her without question, the massive warships followed her deeper into enemy space. What had once been the pride of the Vorthak Empire was now a weapon pointed at its heart. Mina stood on the bridge of Vextar's former flagship, watching star charts that showed Vorthak territory stretching across dozens of star systems. Each system contained millions of the reptilian warriors who had built their empire on the bones of conquered worlds. "Admiral," reported the ship's converted communications officer, "we're receiving surrender offers from 3 Vorthak colonies in the Outer Rim. They want to negotiate." "No negotiations," Mina replied. They didn't negotiate with the families on Taiyang. Engineer Yun Ki had spent the past month upgrading their weapons using Vorthak technology. The nanobots were now faster and more efficient, able to convert an entire ship's crew in minutes instead of hours. The Trojan horse virus had evolved too, becoming capable of spreading through visual contact as well as electronic signals. "The new memory implants are ready," Yun Ki announced. "We can now force converted Vorthak to experience specific memories, while keeping them conscious and aware." "Show me," Mina said. Yoon-ki activated a device that projected the memories directly into the minds of every Vorthok on the ship. Suddenly, hundreds of converted enemy soldiers were experiencing Mina's memories of Taeyang's destruction. They felt what she had felt watching her husband vaporize under alien weapons. They experienced her terror as she held her daughter's broken body. The converted Vorthak didn't just see these memories, they experienced them as if they were their own. They felt the fear and pain and loss that came with watching their families die. "This is what you did to my people," Mina announced over the ship's communication system. "Now you understand what it feels like." The converted soldiers stood at their posts with tears streaming down their scaled faces. They continued to follow orders, but now they carried the emotional weight of their empire's crimes. Pilot Bae Su was leading attacks on Vorthak supply lines throughout their territory. His squadron of converted enemy ships struck without warning, appearing from hyperspace to destroy cargo convoys and military transports. But these weren't simple hit-and-run attacks. "Each ship we capture gives us more intelligence," Bae Su reported during their daily briefing. "The Vorthak Empire is larger than we thought, but it's also more vulnerable. Most of their colonies depend on supplies from a few central worlds." "What about their military strength?" Professor Han Wu asked. The old man had insisted on coming along, saying someone needed to document what they were doing for history. Individually, Vorthak warriors are stronger and more aggressive than humans, Bae Su explained. But they're not used to fighting enemies, who can turn their own weapons against them. Every battle we win gives us more converted soldiers. Sergeant Oh Min had become Mina's intelligence chief, coordinating information from their growing network of converted ships. "We've identified the Empire's central command structure," he announced. "Most orders come from Vorth Prime, their capital, world. If we can take control of their communication network there, we can spread the Trojan horse virus to every Vorthak military unit in the galaxy." The plan was ambitious and dangerous. Vorth Prime was the most heavily defended world in the Empire, surrounded by orbital defense platforms and protected by their largest fleet. But it was also the heart of everything the Vorthak had built. "How many people live on Vorth Prime?" Han Wu asked. "Approximately 8 billion, Oh Min replied. "All Vorthak civilians and military personnel." 8 billion lives, Han Wu said quietly. "Are we really planning to convert an entire planet?" Mina looked at him with eyes that had grown colder over the months of warfare. "They had no problem killing 50,000 humans. Why should 8 billion Vorthak be different?" "Because we're supposed to be better than they are." "No," Mina said. "We're supposed to be survivors. Being better is a luxury for people whose families are still alive." The journey to Vorth Prime took 3 weeks. Along the way, Mina's fleet grew larger as more Vorthak ships fell under her control. By the time they reached the capital system, she commanded over 200 vessels, most of them former enemy warships crewed by converted soldiers. The orbital defenses around Vorth Prime were massive structures that could destroy entire fleets. But Mina didn't plan to fight them conventionally. Instead, she used a new weapon that Yoon-ki had developed, a virus that could convert electronic systems as well as biological ones. "Release the digital nanobots," Mina ordered. "Invisible streams, of microscopic machines flowed from her ships toward the orbital platforms. These nanobots were designed to infiltrate computer systems and rewrite their programming, turning the Empire's own defenses against them. Within hours, the massive defense platforms were targeting Vorthak ships instead of human ones. The Empire's own weapons began destroying their protective fleet while opening safe passages for Mina's forces. Supreme Commander Vextar had been held prisoner on Mina's flagship since the battle at Earth. She had kept him alive and unconverted because she wanted him to witness the destruction of everything he had helped build. "Your homeworld is about to fall," she told him as they watched the orbital battle through the ship's main viewer. "Your people are about to experience what mine felt on Taiyang." Vexatar had lost weight during his imprisonment, and his scales had grown dull with despair. "You're destroying an entire civilization for revenge. I'm giving an entire civilization the gift of understanding what their victims experienced. After today, every Vorthak alive will carry the memories of everyone who died because of your empire's expansion. That's not justice. That's torture. Justice would have been your empire leaving peaceful colonies alone. Torture is what you did to my daughter before you killed her." The converted fleet entered Vorth Prime's atmosphere and began landing on the capital city. Mina's soldiers, many of them former Vorthak warriors who now served her cause, spread through the streets broadcasting the Trojan horse virus from mobile transmitters. The virus spread through the planetary communication network like wildfire. Every screen, every speaker, every electronic device on the planet became a transmission point for the conversion signal. Vorthak civilians and soldiers who looked at infected displays found their brain patterns being rewritten. But this version of the virus did more than create loyalty. It implanted memories. As millions of Vorthak were converted, they received the experiences of every human who had died in their empire's expansion. They felt the fear of colonists watching their homes burn. They experienced the grief of parents, losing their children to alien weapons. An entire planet of predators suddenly understood what it felt like to be prey. The conversion process took 18 hours. When it was complete, 8 billion Vorthak knelt in the streets of their capital world, tears streaming down their faces as they begged forgiveness from a woman whose family they had helped destroy. Mina stood in the central square of Vorth Prime's largest city, surrounded by converted enemies who now served her absolutely. She activated a planetary broadcast system and spoke to the entire Vorthak population. "I am Admiral Lee Mina of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your empire is ended. Your soldiers now serve humanity. Your people now understand the pain you caused. Others?" She paused, looking out at the sea of kneeling figures. "This is what happens when someone kills our children." The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council was held on the neutral world of Kepler Station. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their voices creating a symphony of fear and confusion. At the center of it all sat the human delegation, looking uncomfortable under the stares of beings who had once considered them harmless. Ambassador Park Jin tried to maintain his diplomatic composure, but sweat beaded on his forehead as he faced questions from species who now saw humanity as a threat to galactic stability. The Vorthak Empire controlled 47 star systems, announced Counselor Vestan of the Altarian Republic. In 6 months, one human woman conquered all of them using weapons that violate every treaty on prohibited warfare. The human government had nothing to do with Admiral Mina's actions. Ambassador Park insisted. She was acting as a rogue agent without official authorization. A rogue agent who somehow acquired weapons from your planet's most classified archives, replied Counselor Zephyra of the Centauri Alliance. Weapons that your species promised were destroyed after your unification wars. President Li Wan watched the proceedings from Earth through a secure communication link. His own military advisors had been asking the same questions for months. How had one grieving scientist managed to break into the most secure facility on Earth? How had she converted an entire enemy empire using weapons that most humans didn't even know existed? The answer was sitting in the front row of the assembly hall. Admiral Lee Mina had arrived at Kepler Station aboard a converted Vorthak dreadnought, escorted by a fleet of former enemy warships. She wore a simple black uniform with no insignia, except a small pin showing the purple flower that had once grown on Taeyang Colony. When the council president called her to speak, she walked to the central platform with steady steps. The assembled representatives fell silent as she looked around the great hall. Honored delegates, she began in the calm voice of someone who had nothing left to lose. You're afraid of what I've done. You should be. Murmurs of concern rippled through the audience. 6 months ago, my species was considered harmless. Humans were the friendly traders, the diplomatic mediators, the ones who preferred talking to fighting. We were so peaceful that when the Vorthak Empire demanded we sacrifice 50,000 colonists to prevent a war, our government agreed. Ambassador Park shifted uncomfortably in his seat. But you made a mistake, Mina continued. You forgot that humans aren't naturally peaceful. We became peaceful because we learned what we were capable of when we weren't. The weapons I used against the Vorthak Empire are just a small sample of what my species created when we fought each other. She activated a holographic display that showed images from Earth's unification wars. Cities reduced to glass craters, continents poisoned by biological weapons, orbital platforms that could crack planets like eggs. These weapons were built by humans fighting humans. We didn't need alien technology or advanced alien science. We used human creativity and human determination and human rage. And when the wars ended, we were so terrified of what we had become that we locked everything away and promised to be civilized. The hall was completely silent now. Even the mechanical translator seemed to pause between her words. The Vorthak Empire thought they were apex predators. They built their civilization on conquest and violence, believing that made them strong. But they never fought a species that was better at violence than they were. She gestured toward the entrance where her converted Vorthak officers stood at attention. Every one of these soldiers used to serve the empire that destroyed my family. Now they serve me absolutely, carrying the memories of every human who died because of their former loyalty. They understand now what their empire really was. Not strong predators, but bullies who had never faced anything stronger than themselves. Counselor Vexathon of the Altarian Republic stood up. Are you threatening this council, Admiral? I'm explaining reality to this council, Mina replied. For 300 years, humans have been pretending to be something we're not. We've been the helpful species, the diplomatic species, the species that solves problems with words instead of weapons, and that worked fine as long as everyone respected the rules. She looked directly at the human delegation. But our own government broke those rules first. They decided that some human lives were worth less than galactic peace. They made a deal with murderers and expected the victims to stay silent about it. President Lee Wan's image flickered on the communication screen. Admiral, the Federation's decision regarding Taiyang was made to prevent a larger war that could have killed millions. And my decision regarding the Vorthak Empire was made to ensure that no one else would have to watch their children die for political convenience. She turned back to the assembled delegates. You're wondering what happens next. You're wondering if humans will use these weapons against other species. You're wondering if we'll build a new empire based on conquest and fear. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. The answer is simple, Mina said. That depends entirely on you. She walked closer to the delegates' seating area. Treat humans as equals. Respect our colonies and our citizens. Don't make deals that sacrifice our people for your convenience. Do that, and you'll never see these weapons again. Humans will go back to being the peaceful species you remember. And if we don't? Asked Counselor Zephyra. Mina smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then you'll discover that the Vorthak Empire wasn't the only civilization in this galaxy that needed to learn some humility. The council session ended without any formal resolutions, but the message had been received. Within a week, 3 separate species had issued formal apologies for trade disputes with human colonies. The Altarian Republic withdrew their territorial claims on human space. The Centauri Alliance offered to renegotiate their economic treaties. On more favorable terms, humanity's status in the galactic community had changed permanently. They were no longer the harmless mediators who could be ignored or manipulated. They were the species that had conquered an empire using weapons their enemies couldn't understand or counter. 3 months later, Mina stood in a cemetery on the rebuilt world of Taiyang. The colony had been reconstructed using converted Vorthak labor, making it even more beautiful than before. Purple flowers bloomed in gardens tended by former enemy soldiers who now found peace in nurturing life instead of destroying it. She knelt beside 2 small graves marked with simple stones. Sol's grave was decorated with the colorful beetles she had loved to collect. Hyun's grave held a small bundle of the purple flowers he had helped Mina modify in their laboratory. I kept my promise, she whispered to the stones. I made them pay for what they did to you. Professor Han Wu approached quietly and stood beside her. The old man had grown even more frail during their campaign, but his eyes remained sharp. Do you think it was worth it? He asked. Mina looked out over the peaceful valley where children played in gardens, tended by converted enemies. In the distance, former Vorthak warriors worked alongside human colonists to build new homes and schools. Ask me in 50 years, she said, when these children are grown and no one remembers being afraid of monsters in the dark. She stood and brushed dirt from her knees. The galaxy thought it knew what humans were capable of. They thought we were the cute, harmless species that preferred talking to fighting. They were wrong about that, just like they were wrong about everything else. The wind stirred the purple flowers, carrying their scent across the valley. We're not the monsters. We're the ones the monsters should fear.